Hello everyone, this is Korosh Erfani and today is Saturday, March 28, 2026. We are reporting the end of the first month of the war of Israel and the United States against Iran, and we start to go through the second month of this war. We knew that the process according to which Israel had brought the United States into this war cannot be stopped, right? We talked about endless war, and we know that the endless war is not a tactique, is a strategy. Now the system, and I am talking about the Zio-Capitalism system, is in such a situation that it needs continuous, endless wars. And of course, this one could be not the first one, not the last one, but one of the wars that Israel and the United States have waged in order to have effectively a continuation and development of chaos through which they want to find a way for survival. We are not talking about a system that has any objective, that has any future, that has any prospect. The system from now on cannot be stabilized, right? It can only and only survive through chaos. And if there is no chaos, of course, the system will die out, right? So that's why they need effectively more and more wars, and with any pretext, for any reason, and they are trying to get that with Iran, later most probably with Turkey, with Pakistan, and so on. So the system is alive only and only thanks to wars, thanks to military conflicts, and otherwise it cannot survive. Keep that as an introduction and as the foundation of our argument. You remember we presented a scheme according to which that's the strategic ring model. They start by striking, leadership, and once the leadership is removed, they go through the system essentials, and then they finish with infrastructure. So if at any of these steps there is enough chaos, if there is disintegration of the system, the system that had been attacked, of course they can stop, or they can at least put and halt, for a moment, like in Libya, in Syria, for example. But what about if the target system starts to show resistance or kind of resilience, right? In this case, they go farther. They go through infrastructure, and then population, and at the end field forces, which means the military forces that are underground. All right, for the current case, with the starting of the second month, I think we can feel the total impasse of military action, kinetic movements of the United States and Israel, both of them. So we have now the proof that they have started to bomb the civilians, which means that we are here, we are in the population, because as you can see, now we have some news coming from Iran, just talking about tonight, Tehran tonight. Trump and Israel are carrying out multiple massacres across Iran's capital. They are dropping bombs on civilians' homes across the city. This is it. This is the steps that we have been talking about. Population. From now on, they start to massacre the ordinary population. There are more and more proof, like here, bombing in Isfahan, for example, just the kids park, bomb and killing something like 25 people over there, including children. So this is it. Now they have this total impasse. They cannot do anything that can be taken into account as victory, military victory or whatsoever, and that's why now they are trying to completely destroying everything that is from infrastructure. Here, for example, they are trying to bring about more chaos by attacking here a water source in Iran so that they can provoke Iran to counterattack the desalination waters of the Arab countries in the Persian Gulf, and having a real total chaos and continuous war in the region. This is what they want. So now with beginning bombing the residentials, because what they are doing right now is bombing the residential across the capital. Now we have just two remaining options for this war. One is boots on the ground, and as you can see, the Israeli agent Mark Levin is preparing everything for that, because Trump recommended to watch the Mark Levin show tonight, and tonight he is talking about the necessity of bringing the forces on the ground, right? This is what he is recommending. He is ordering from Netanyahu to his valet, and the puppet Trump. This is it. That's the idea. The Israelis need Trump to commit ground troops so we stay engaged in achieving Israel's strategic goal in Iran. This is the recommendation of Mark Levin and his company in order to send something like, maybe 500,000 people over there, or a number, like that. Let me show you something that can help to understand what is going on if really United States decide to send boots on the ground. Here you have a demonstration of this, very interesting. You have first a comparison of the superficie of Vietnam, South Vietnam, where the Americans were fighting for years and years, and the superficie of Iran, 174,000 square kilometer with 1,650,000 square kilometers. Okay, so for Vietnam War that lasted 8 years, they had to send something like at the max 543,000 soldiers over there, with something like 58,000 US troops killed and 53,000 wounded. Okay, this is how it works if you want to take 174,000 square kilometers over there. Another example is in the island of Okinawa, just 1,200 kilometers, 82 days of battle, and sending 184,000 soldiers over there, with the casualties of how much? 12,500 US troop killed, and of course 36,000 wounded. So for Iran, here you can compare, just the island Qeshm with Okinawa. Qeshm is even larger than Okinawa, and they need to send at least something bigger than 184,000 and getting something like 12,000 dead. So approximately for the whole Iran they need several million soldiers, something between 1, 2, 3, 4 million soldiers, so that's why they have to, of course, get everyone in the streets and bring it to the army and send to Iran in order to be successful over there. And I doubt about that. I seriously doubt about that. But that's the first option. That's the first option in order just to continue the war. Okay, that's the objective. Endless war. Just providing what is necessary in order to obtain what is the ephemeral goal of Israel and the United States, continuous war, and that's it. And the other options, once they start effectively to have many body bags from these huge extraordinary operation over there, is to nuke Iran. Nuking Iran, we said that would be just the first phase of the nuclear Third World War. I am trying to give you just the options, the system. I'm talking about the system, the Abrahamic capitalism system, in order to act and do something to save itself, which would be theoretically impossible, totally, utterly impossible to save such a system. And I am going to unpack my argument why I consider it as something impossible. So that's it. That's for the first crisis the system has right now on its hands, a system that cannot generate from now on but crisis. Okay, nothing. We should wait nothing positive from the American system, Israeli system, and the combination Zio-Capitalist system as positive. It's impossible to imagine anything positive. Just negative, destruction, annihilation, and vanishing completely the human species from the earth. This is what they can do, and you will see why. Let's see another one, just to give you an idea about how Trump administration and the Zio team and the Zio cannibal who are surrounding him are completely encircled. Okay, so as you know, and as the image that you have in the background shows, we got a very successful No Kings March on 28 March, and from that we can congratulate any American for having participated or having had any kind of activity, so that we can get that. Okay, so I am going to explain you why this march was important, but in parallel to that, as you know, there was very interesting protest also. So I am not talking about what we had in other countries, like in United Kingdom, in London we had 500,000 people over there, in Rome, in Paris, and so on. No, I am talking about Tel Aviv. In Tel Aviv, we got a very interesting case, anti-war protest. Can you imagine, in a country where something between 80 to 90% of the population were supposed, according to Israeli media, this war, now we had an anti-war that was violently repressed. And look at that, Haaretz is reporting Israelis rally against Iran war, police violently dispersed protesters in Tel Aviv. And when it says violently, it means really so on, because the image showed the horrible scene where first look at the population, look at the crowds. As you can see, it's really impressive, right? And we had a lot of clashes with police and the protesters, right? The police brutally tried to, quell them, shut them down completely. So, over there are many people who are telling us that from now on in Tel Aviv, in Israel, you cannot have protests against war, which means we have a kind of military government, right? We have a kind of North Korea government over there, because they are not by police authorized to have a gathering against war, right? So if you want to protest against the war, you won't get authorization. You must come with any other label or pretext in order to have a gathering over there. And this guy is explaining this. So which means that Netanyahu and the people in Israel are telling us that Netanyahu wants just more and more war in order to put in question, to call into question the election, the coming elections, because they don't want to lose. They know that they are going to lose, right? So they have lost the war in Gaza. They are massacring people in the West Bank. They are getting really badly hit in Lebanon, and they are getting completely destroyed by the Iranian missiles without having any tangible result of the war that they have started against Iran. What's the result? The result is that the Israelis don't believe anymore on the nonsensical sayings of Netanyahu, according to which we are vanishing Hezbollah, we are destroying Iran, there won't be any risk anymore. Nobody believes that in this kind of, baseless claims by Netanyahu. So this is just to give you an idea that as you can see, in conjunction with what we have had here as the March of No Kings, in Israel also there was a kind of No Kings, that was no Netanyahu, and that was badly, effectively repressed. Now, back to the United States, with a huge success for organizing. So the estimations are around 7 to 9 million, So the lowest is 7 million, the highest is 9 million, and in more than 3,000 points, 3,000 actions, including rural areas and the suburbs, okay? Which means beside the big cities, big towns, we had many actions in the small towns here and there. So which means that the social basis of the GOP and Trump are really falling down, and this is very significant for whatever GOP can wait as the result in the coming election. So look at this, absolutely bombshell. Time reports the No King protests are the largest anti-Trump demonstrations ever. Resistance is exploding in rural and suburban areas. Americans are completely fed up with Trump administration's agenda of chaos, cruelty, and corruption. That's it. Now we have, as you can see, one impasse, let's say, one serious crisis, serious trouble for the war with no solution, with no runoff for now. And here inside United States, we have effectively 7 million people who are there to show their hate somehow. And not only dissatisfaction, because it's much more than that, seriously, and we cannot reduce it to just a protest. You know, it's something bigger than that right now, and the people are, according to the, the actions, the different actions that they have, the signs and so on, they are sending a warning to the White House. This is a serious warning, according to which you have to act now. You have to correct yourself, otherwise we are going to have other kinds of action, other categories of protest, as it was the case in Los Angeles just after the end of the march. We have had a little troubles in Los Angeles. The society is ready, the society is really, the American society is fed up with Trump. And 7 million people have been there to send a message that you have to get, we have to get rid of you. You have to get lost. Look at just the tune of what is going on. Mark Lynch, a Senate candidate challenging Lindsey Graham in South Carolina, is calling for him to be arrested for treason. It's time to arrest him. He's a traitor. This is the feeling that society, American society, Americans have. And I am talking about the Americans from all walks of the life, right? They think that they have been somehow betrayed by Trump administration, by Trump and his corrupt administration, right? So the march was really over the top, perfect for sending a message to say that this is the limit, this is the red line of our civil movement in order to show our protest. From now on, from this point, if there is something really in the sense of worsening the situation, because the reaction of Trump administration was just that we don't care. It's not important to us to have such a thing. You have protested, okay, it's good. Here, this is the reaction of the White House. We don't think about protest at all. This is it. That's the idea of we don't want to see you in the streets. It's not important. We have an agenda. We have the Epstein file. We have the Zionist and we have the Israeli President of the United States, Stephen Miller, and we want to destroy your country, and we are in action. So whatever you do as protest is not important. And what they are organizing, I am telling you, as mentioned in the earlier videos, they are organizing to thwart completely the possibility of having a fair and free elections. So now the agenda of Trump and his Zio team is just how we can cancel the midterm elections. And we know what does it mean, right? Such a thing, even though Israel is looking for creating false flag 9/11 multiplied by 10 or 20 times more, but Americans now are aware that everything is in the hands of Israel, right? And of course, in order to avoid like what is Netanyahu is doing in Israel, Exactly the same thing Israelis are telling us, that he is doing all of these. He is dragging the country into the new war with Lebanon, with Iran. Just today they started to retreat Syria. They want to go into Syria again, just to have several options in order to continue to keep on with more and more military conflict, wars, and so on and so on. No election, no democracy, no peace, nothing. This is what is happening in the United States too. If you hear that President Trump has decided to send the boots on the ground, please know that this is the beginning of the end. Okay? Beginning of the end of what we call the entity, any entity that is called United States of America is the end. That would be such a catastrophe that I don't think that the American empire can really survive from that. Impossible to imagine, because we are going to have a huge economic impact from that, a gigantic social disorder. We are going to have uprisings, and from uprising in a country with 400 million weapons in the hands of everyone, we are going to have a very bloody, violent civil war. So the war is in impasse. Domestic issue is, as we can see, at least for this uprising, civil uprising we can call that, is a total impasse, because this is the reaction of White House. We don't think about that. We don't care about that. Okay, we will see. And then we have also the issue of government shutdown. I don't want to develop that because it's very complicated between the Democrat and Republicans in order to fund the DHS or not. But what is important is this one. If there is even partial shutdown, we are going to have more and more troubles, because this is what is happening right now, for the airports, flights, services, everything is almost catastrophic in the United States right now. And just imagine that all of this before the arrival of the huge economic crisis that is coming. And we are going to talk about that, because I want, based on the development of this part related to economy and the economic crisis that is, spreading in the United States, getting to a very interesting conclusion. So let's see how the things are. JP Morgan has started to make a map. In this map, it's telling us how much time we have still left in order to be in serious trouble. Let me give you a few indications. For example, for Asia, JP Morgan believes that the real trouble, the deep trouble in economy starts from April 1st. From Wednesday, we are going to have serious trouble in Asia. And then Europe, that will be April 10. And in North America, it's April 15. And in Australia, 20. So what kind of trouble is talking about? So we are going to have serious issues in the supply chain, and we can have the scenes that will be the equivalent of the first signs of social disorder. The people will be facing the shortage of some essentials in their daily life. Fruit, vegetables, meat, and of course we are talking about fuels, gas, with the prices that are not imaginable for American society right now, for the ordinary average Americans, and we are going to have it in a much worse case in just 2 weeks. Look at one of the countries that was outside of this Abraham capitalist system for a while, at least partially, and when the Ukraine war started, it entered into in NATO and started to have the problems that are interconnected for all these Abrahamic capitalist system. I am talking about the Finland, and as you can see, the political, it says the political suicide in Finland, 2,000 people in line for bread. This is what we are going to have in many developed countries. I am not talking about the poor countries, because over there it would be kind of real civil war in order to get something to eat. I am talking about the rich country, the developed country, industrialized countries, Europeans and North America. 20,000 people just in line for bread. This kind of scene will be seen here, in the United States of America, in Canada, and in other Western countries, one after another. We have to take seriously, these warnings when they are coming from those who have their hands, in the economy, including Madame Christine Lagarde. As you know, she is president of the European Central Bank, and she is telling this. She is telling us we are facing a real shock, probably beyond what we can imagine at the moment. So what we are imagining at the moment is just most probably inflation or some shortage here and there. No, she's talking about something much more serious, and she's telling us that what has been started during the war and the shutdown of the Strait of Hormuz is just the tip of the iceberg, and we must be waiting for deeper and deeper crisis at all the levels and all the fields of economy. And she's talking about something that will last. Attention, the disruption may last years. So it's not something superficial, something that is able to be predicted as lasting for years. It means that it's very deep, right? It's very serious. Because she's telling us that something is just emerging, and gradually it will lead to something extremely deep and multi-layered. Now, we have more and more indication that this time the economic crisis that we are going to start just touching that is really serious. Here you can see that it said the Iran war has wiped $12 trillion from global market. $12 trillion. This is more than the entire economies of Germany, Japan, and the United Kingdom combined. And we are just talking about 4 weeks. But believe me, that's why I told you that if we have just the first news of sending the American soldiers in on the Iranian territory, sending boot on the ground, we can be sure that we are engaged in a war of attrition. We are engaged in a war for months, or according to some sources, years. I don't think that we will get to years, but for months and months we are going to have to go through a hell, a global hell, global economic hell. Because for 4 weeks and just warming up, it's not a war yet, but the real war starts when either the boots on the ground or to nuke Iran, either one. For just warming up $12 trillion, the equivalent of the economy of Germany, Japan, and United Kingdom combined, can you imagine for the second month? Can you imagine something for the third month? This is what is going to happen. This is what the world has to undergo, because the Zio-Capitalism is in internal crisis and cannot really last longer if it cannot wage the new wars. I can tell you the utmost of crisis, the cardinal one, would be the food crisis here. Food crisis in the making. Doge gas reserve are at 6%, approximately 6% for reserves of Doge gas. And then said that Netherlands is the second largest food exporter. A great part of the global population is fed by just this little country, Netherlands. 80% of export vegetables come from greenhouses. And greenhouses needs what? The greenhouses need gas. And there is just 6% yet left as reserve. So which means that very soon we are going to have Netherlands as an out-of-service country for feeding millions, hundreds of millions of people across the world. Just to give you an idea about what kind of crisis we are talking about. I can add more and more facts, but we have a limited time. Let me go to the core of of our argument. The core is this one. My very basic hypothesis is this one, is that the system is on the verge of collapse. And by the system, I mean the Abrahamic system, a combination of Zionism and capitalism. All right, a very nasty combination that exploited the world, that depleted the natural resources, that almost set fire to the planet, and it knows that it lost the game, and right now, instead of accepting and admitting that they have lost the historical game of existence, they want to put an end to the existence of the world. Let me give you a few numbers just to illustrate that. The American economists are telling us that United States right now is a bankrupted country, is a bankrupt country. America has bankrupted very clearly and completely and hopelessly. You know why? Because the U.S. government asset, what the American government has as asset, is worth something like $6 trillion. Just $6 trillion is the assets of the American government. Anything that it possesses, right? What about liability? The liability is something close to $48 trillion. So on the one side you have $6 trillion and just as asset, and $48 trillion as liabilities. But don't forget, when we say 48, it doesn't include all the engagement of the American government regarding the different institutions, like for example pensions. It has to pay all the pensions, subsidies to the population where that is necessary, or health insurance, for example, or any other kind of social obligations that government has normally in the United States. So if you add these unfunded liabilities with the 48 trillions, you get to a new number. Don't forget, the assets is still are still 6 trillion. Doesn't change, right? But if you add all these cases, subsidies, health insurance, pensions, and so on, 48 trillion become 88 trillion. 40 trillion more. $88 trillion just here, and on the other hand, $6 trillion. You have again to add up some other elements that are in the field of like national debt, for example, which is a kind of obligation and liability for government. You get to 136 to 140 trillion dollars. So don't forget, this number we are talking about, 136 trillion dollars, is 5 times bigger than the US GDP. The US GDP, gross domestic products per year in the United States, is something like 25, 26, 27 trillion dollars. So 136 trillion unpaid debt for the US government for in exchange of just $6 trillion of asset. So how do you judge that? With the basic, just the basic knowledge of accounting, we know that when an entity has more liabilities than asset, it's bankrupt, officially and theoretically bankrupt. So they know that. Trump and his corrupt team know perfectly that they took power in a government that is completely bankrupt. So are they going to accept that? Are they going to file for bankruptcy? No. What they do? They wage war. That's the solution. The solution is, all right, we are going to fall. We are going to fall down, and we are nose diving right now. So what we have to do? You have just to try to see if instead of going down alone, we can bring everyone else with ourselves. That's the idea. The idea is that if we set fire to the house, most probably the promissory note will be burned also, right? All the the documents of our debt will be burned, and nobody knows that how much we have to everyone across the world. That's the idea. The idea is as basic and as filthy and vicious that you can imagine. It's very simple and basic, right? We are bankrupt. We don't want to recognize our bankruptcy. We don't want to announce it. We don't want to be seen as losers, right? Because we are talking about not a social class or a bunch of politicians. We are talking about a system whose components are capitalism in North America, in Europe, Western capitalism, and also all the Zionist network. We are talking about a huge, monstrous corporation belonging to Rockefellers, Rothschilds. So they are there in order to just suck money, and they have been doing so for more than 200 years. But now the whole planet doesn't have anything to provide to them, and that's why they want to set a fire to the planet. This is what they want to do. They want to say that as the Zio-Capitalism is going to collapse, we will make sure that you fall apart, with us, that you break down at the same time. We won't be alone. Is it possible? Can they do that? This is the last part of my presentation. Just trying to answer to the simple question. Are they so powerful that they can really destroy the planet with themselves? Can they really eliminate everything on Earth? It depends. So we have to provide a conditional answer. It depends. It depends on, of course, many things, but I am talking about one of them that is maybe the most important of that, because we are discussing this topic just in a day where 7 million Americans were in the streets to show effectively that they don't want such a thing. They don't want such a system. They don't want such a corrupt people at the top of the system. I am telling you. I saw that Tucker Carlson was talking about either we have to forget about democracy and we have to become the slaves of a new, we don't know, digital AI system controlling everything without any freedom and so on and so on. That's one choice. And I am telling you, with the conditions we are describing here, even what he's suggesting is not really an option, because the system will not really keep all these people alive when it's going down, when it knows that the presence of millions and billions of people are completely depleting all the carrying capacity of Earth, and from that moment we will be all die, literally die, and the system doesn't want to die. The system wants to kill the people, to do away with the population, global population, in order to preserve the remaining resources for itself. So that's why the first case, that the system will leave us alone, controlled, okay, without freedom, okay, like slaves, for example. The slavery was a system that provided food and shelter to slaves, right? But it cannot do that. We have been talking about the food crisis. The system cannot provide food, cannot feed its slaves, even though we don't want to be slaves, but for the sake of argument, if we imagine that even and identified ourselves as okay, consenting to be a slaves of the system, at least please feed us, give us something to eat. System cannot do that. It doesn't have anything to provide. I am talking about millions and billions of people. So it's not that. My argument revolves around the idea that the system must get rid of us, get rid of the absolute majority of the global population. Tucker Carlson suggests a second option, or we have to make a revolution. And I think that stands to reason. This suggestion is completely makes sense, right? Why? Because if we want a change that can assure somehow a survival to us, we have to change the system. As long as the system as such, as it is, continues to live, it destroys everything. It wages war. It kills people. It creates starving, droughts, the destruction of environment. So what we have to do is a revolution that is anti-systemic revolution, which means we have to completely push out this system with this characteristic in order to establish a new system. We cannot just through this protest, for example, 7 million people, like no king's protest. Okay, we cannot just express our anger, our dissatisfaction, right, and then let the system do whatever it wants, because you saw that as the answer to us, it is telling us that no, we don't care really, we are not interested in your whatsoever, right, we have other things to do, we want to go to send a troop on the ground in Iran, so that's why we don't care if you march. And it's true, because this is not for the first time, this is the third round, right? And we can have a fourth round, a fifth one, but as long as we let the system intact in the hands of the psychopath pedophile over there, of course they do whatever they want. They are not waiting for us, in order to express our anger, and then they will precipitate to change everything. No, it doesn't work like that. On the basis of what we have already in the previous rounds, in the past, they don't do that, because we have already done that earlier, and we saw that no, they don't listen to us. So if we want a change, it should be a real change, and the real change is to have an alternative for the current corrupt system. What's our alternative? What we have to suggest? What's the idea? What's the new idea? Because if we want to wait this corrupt system to reform itself, even through an election, a landslide victory, and we have had already that. Remember 2008 with the famous slogan of Obama, change, yes we can, but we change, bailing out all the corrupt and bankrupt banks and financial system of the Zio-Capitalism. This is what Obama did. That was the change. Yes, he could do that, but not the change that we wanted. This is not that. This is not by the little reform and that we can hope. This is not by elections. This is not by usual established ways, the cliches of system, of institutions, that we can hope a better tomorrow, a better future. It doesn't work like that. Take notice one thing. The system cannot function otherwise. The system can only and only work based on whatever it was doing during 200 years, waging war, killing, exploiting, depleting the resources, repressing, and so on and so on. This is what the system can do. This is what the system is done for. The system took shape in order to, have this kind of functions. It cannot do otherwise. It cannot do anything else. If you want something else, you have to change the system. You have to set a new system up in such a way that its function can bring about positive outcome, constructive outcome. The fair distribution of wealth, for example, providing the well-being to everyone, assuring the health care for everyone, assuring the shelter for everyone. This is what we need. And we have been told a lot of lies, through the fake alternative, which was communism, Marxism, and so on. That was fake. That was done by another part of, the Abrahamic dominant class. That was completely fake. You don't need those cliches. They don't work. They were never a real alternative to capitalism. That's why they failed, completely failed. We need something else. We need something new, based on new philosophical basis, new philosophical idea, and from that moment we can, set up a new model of society where it's a matter of, fairness. We don't want equality in the mechanical meaning of the term, as Marxism was spreading out here and there as the main idea. Equality. What equality? We want fairness. And fairness means that a society where you give the possibility and opportunity to everyone without having the barriers, including, the invisible barriers, which is the class barriers, to everyone in order to prosper, in order to get a better life, fairly. Social justice. We are talking about justice, fairness. We are not talking about, bringing everything under control of state, or giving everyone a common portion, similar portion. No, everyone according to its efforts, of course, their efforts, their talents, their intelligence, their creativity, but in a fair context, accompanying with justice everything, which the current system is completely diametrically far from. And this is what we need. So that's why, in conclusion, I would like to say this. The system is bankrupt. The system is done. The system is over. What is trying to do is to set fire to the crime scenes, because we should be aware that what is condemned to death sentence here is not the word, is capitalism. It's the Zio-Capitalism. This is the Zio-Capitalism that had been in the death row, right? And as it doesn't want to die, it wants to bring everyone here and to put them to death, with the idea that if we can get rid of millions and billions of people, maybe we, the corrupt minority, can survive. What about that? Trump represents that. Trump is not a person. Trump is a symbol of this idea that we are clever, we are smart, we can deceive the people, we can deceive the world, we can get rid of them, we can do away with them, and then keep everything for ourselves. Ourselves is who? Is just the minority that thinks that it can do it. You know, it depends on us to give them this possibility or not, that they can really get rid of us or not, they can get rid of humanity or not. Of course, if we don't have a good distinction of the things, if we don't have a deep comprehension of the situation, they can do that, right? But as soon as we are aware about, the whole thing, when you have a deep analysis of the situation, I think there would be a chance so that we can find the good direction of action, the good direction for social movement in order to generate a real change. Because what is at stake is our future as human species, as human race, right? This is at risk right now. This is what is in the balance. So that's why we must be very attentive about that and see what we can do with our intelligence, with our determination, with our will, and with our solidarity. We are going to talk more about that in the coming video. Thank you very much. I hope you can help me to share more and more these videos with other people. I would appreciate if you can make any efforts for that. Thank you. See you in the next video.